Hollywood loves to project an image of perfection, glittering red carpets, flawless stars, and studios that feel larger than life. But behind the scenes, the industry has a long history of shutting doors on its own talent. Careers have vanished overnight, not because of fading popularity, but because powerful studios decided a star had become too difficult, too controversial, or simply too dangerous to keep around. Some were banned for public scandals, others for explosive clashes with executives, and a few were exiled for reasons that remain mysterious even today, buried deep in studio archives and whispered about in industry circles. The real question is which stars were pushed out, who made those decisions, and what secret battles led to their downfall. If you're ready to uncover the stories Hollywood tried to erase, make sure to subscribe to Tick Tick. You won't want to miss what comes next. 15. Fatty Arbuckle. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle was once one of Hollywood's most powerful comedic forces. A performer whose charm, timing, and physical brilliance shaped the early identity of American film. During his peak, he commanded record salaries, headlined major productions, and mentored rising stars who would later become legends. Audiences adored him, studios trusted him, and his name alone could guarantee a box office hit. Arbuckle stood at a level where few comedians had ever reached, and for a moment he looked unstoppable. The turning point came during the notorious hotel incident involving actress Virginia Rappe, a tragedy that spiraled into one of the most sensationalized scandals of the silent era. Though he consistently maintained his innocence, the press transformed the story into a moral battlefield. Newspapers exaggerated, dramatized, and even fabricated details to sell copies, and Arbuckle was depicted as a symbol of Hollywood excess. The trials that followed dominated national headlines and permanently shifted public sentiment, even before any verdict was reached. Studio executives panicked. With the industry already under pressure from moral reform groups, Will Hayes, the newly appointed head of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, issued a sweeping ban on Arbuckle's films. It was a calculated move meant to protect Hollywood's reputation rather than reflect the legal truth. Even after Arbuckle was acquitted, the studios feared the public backlash that might erupt if they restored him. His name was removed from posters, his films quietly shelved, and his career was frozen by forces far beyond his control. The aftermath was devastating. Work offers disappeared, friends distanced themselves, and the comedian who once filled theaters now struggled to find any foothold in an industry he helped build. Arbuckle eventually returned to directing under pseudonyms and attempted a comeback in the final years of his life, but the momentum and public trust he once possessed were gone. Hollywood had closed its doors, and no matter how hard he tried, the shadow of the scandal followed him everywhere. Today, Arbuckle's legacy is complicated. Film historians acknowledge his immense influence on early screen comedy, often noting that he was a victim of public hysteria rather than proven wrongdoing. Some argue that he was the first casualty of Hollywood's image protection machine, a warning of how quickly a studio system could abandon even its brightest stars. Though modern audiences rarely know his full story, those who study Hollywood's origins recognize Arbuckle as a pioneering talent whose downfall revealed the brutal power of the industry he helped make legendary. 14. Judy Garland. Judy Garland was one of the brightest talents ever produced by the studio era. A performer whose voice, emotional depth, and screen presence made her a global icon. From her early rise in vaudeville to her unforgettable breakthrough in The Wizard of Oz, she became MGM's most treasured star. Audiences adored her vulnerability and warmth, while studio executives saw her as a dependable moneymaker with unmatched box office draw. At her peak, Garland embodied everything Hollywood wanted the world to believe. It was magical, glamorous, and irresistibly human. But behind the scenes, the pressures were crushing. Garland was pushed into an exhausting work schedule from a young age, and MGM supervisors closely controlled her diet, appearance, and behavior. To keep her working long hours, she was reportedly given stimulants, and to help her sleep, she was given depressants. The cycle left her physically and emotionally depleted. By the late 40s, her struggles with exhaustion, anxiety, and dependence on medication escalated into missed rehearsals, emotional breakdowns, and conflicts with studio management. The breaking point came during the production of Annie Get Your Gun, when she was unable to continue filming, and MGM finally decided it had reached its limit. The studio's response was swift and cold. Despite her years of loyalty and the fortune she had earned for MGM executives, terminated her contract in an effort to protect their reputation for efficiency and discipline. They feared that keeping Garland would send a message that stars could defy production schedules without consequence. Hollywood was built on control, and Garland, once the perfect example of that system, had become in their eyes unpredictable. Her firing effectively served as a quiet form of blacklisting, signaling to other studios that she was a high-risk hire. The aftermath was harsh. Garland's career entered a turbulent period marked by financial struggles, health crises, and repeated attempts at comebacks. Some studios wanted her star power, but not her vulnerability, while others were wary of the complications that followed her. She turned to concert performances where she found enormous success, but her relationship with Hollywood remained fractured. The system that had built her childhood and shaped her talent now seemed unwilling to offer stability or protection when she needed it most. Today, Judy Garland's legacy is layered and profound. She is remembered not only for her extraordinary artistry, but also as a symbol of how the studio machine exploited young performers for profit. Modern audiences admire her resilience and recognize the human cost behind her brilliance. Film scholars often argue that Garland was never banned in the traditional sense. Instead, she was discarded by a system that failed her, then later celebrated only after she had endured its most painful consequences. Her influence on music, film, and pop culture remains immense, and her story continues to shape conversations about mental health, industry pressure, and the price of fame. 13. Monique. Monique was once celebrated as one of the most distinctive comedic voices in modern Hollywood, rising from stand-up stages to television success, before delivering a powerhouse performance in the film Precious. Her role earned widespread critical acclaim and solidified her place as a major talent, capable of dramatic depth far beyond her earlier comedic image. Winning the Academy Award marked the peak of her career, placing her among Hollywood's elite and opening doors to high-profile opportunities that many believed would define a new chapter in her professional life. The turning point came not from scandal, but from industry politics. After the awards campaign, Monique publicly stated that she refused unpaid promotional appearances that were allegedly expected of her by Lionsgate director Lee Daniels and producer Oprah Winfrey. She claimed she had met all contractual obligations and would not work for free, a stance that clashed with Hollywood's unwritten rules about publicity and cooperation. Her comments ignited controversy, with influential figures arguing that her refusal made her difficult to work with and ungrateful for the opportunities she had received. Studio reactions grew increasingly hostile. Behind closed doors, Monique alleged that major players, including Daniels Winfrey and Tyler Perry, spread the idea that she was blacklisted. Whether officially documented or not, the effect was unmistakable. Studio offers slowed, projects evaporated, and executives avoided attaching her name to new productions. She later claimed that she was punished not for misconduct, but for challenging the system and refusing to participate in unpaid labor. In an industry driven by relationships and informal expectations, her outspokenness was interpreted as disloyalty, making her a perceived threat to Hollywood's power structure. The aftermath forced Monique into a prolonged period of professional drought. Despite her talent and proven ability to deliver award-winning performances, she struggled to secure roles matching her capability. She shifted her focus to stand-up tours, independent projects, and eventually filed lawsuits against Netflix over pay discrimination, continuing to confront the industry she believed had retaliated against her. Only in recent years has she begun to reappear in more visible roles, including collaborations with directors willing to challenge Hollywood norms. Monique's legacy remains both inspiring and cautionary. Supporters view her as a pioneer in fighting for fair compensation and industry transparency, arguing that she exposed the hidden power dynamics, controlling what audiences believe to be merit-based success. Critics, however, maintain that she clashed with the collaborative nature of the system. Regardless of perspective, her story highlights how challenging Hollywood's unwritten rules can lead to consequences just as severe as any formal ban. Today, her narrative continues to spark discussions about labor rights discrimination and the true cost of speaking out in an industry built on silence. 12. Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen was once one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood, a performer with a long resume of successful films and a television career that made him the highest-paid actor on American TV. From Platoon and Wall Street to the massive sitcom hit 2.5 Men, Sheen controlled a level of fame and financial power that few modern actors ever reach. With his charismatic screen presence, sharp comedic timing, and decades of box office reliability, he stood at the very center of mainstream entertainment. At his peak, it seemed no scandal could shake his influence. The unraveling began when Sheen's long-documented personal struggles involving substance use, erratic behavior, and several highly publicized domestic incidents collided with the strict production demands of network television. His increasingly volatile interviews, clashes with co-workers, and escalating conflicts with showrunner Chuck Lorre pushed tensions to a breaking point. The moment that changed everything came when Sheen launched a series of explosive, insult-filled public rants against Lorre and Warner Brothers, creating a media firestorm that the studio could no longer ignore. The studio's reaction was unprecedented. In an industry where profit usually outweighs controversy, Warner Brothers made the rare decision to terminate Sheen's multi-million-dollar contract and ban him from returning to the set. Executives declared his behavior a safety and liability risk, while network representatives privately worried that advertisers would withdraw if the drama continued. The move was a clear message: no matter how big the star, no one is bigger than the studio's authority. By firing and effectively barring him from the show, Hollywood drew a line that Sheen had finally crossed. The aftermath was bruising. Sheen attempted to capitalize on the chaos with live tours, interviews, and catchphrases that became internet memes, but the momentum faded quickly. Major studios hesitated to hire him, fearing unpredictable behavior and legal complications. While he later appeared in smaller projects and attempted professional resets, he never regained the cultural dominance he once enjoyed. The sitcom that made him a household name continued without him, a reminder that Hollywood could move on even from its highest-paid star. Charlie Sheen's legacy is a complex blend of massive talent, undeniable cultural impact, and very public self-destruction. He remains a symbol of how fame, excess, and personal demons can collide in devastating ways. Some fans see him as a gifted performer, undone by his own choices, while others view him as a cautionary tale for an industry that rewards bad behavior until it becomes too big to hide. Whether one believes he was banned or simply replaced, the result was the same: Hollywood closed its doors, and a once unstoppable career became a reminder of the limits of power in a system that always protects itself first. 11. Winona Ryder. Winona Ryder was once one of the most magnetic stars of the 90s, a performer whose mix of vulnerability, intelligence, and rebellious charm captivated audiences. From Beetlejuice and Heathers to Edward Scissorhands and Reality Bites, she defined an entire generation of film culture. Studios adored her versatility, directors praised her instincts, and the public embraced her as the rare young star who could handle both blockbusters and intimate dramas. At her peak, Ryder was not just a Hollywood favorite, she was a cultural icon shaping fashion storytelling and the voice of an era. The turning point came in 2001 when Ryder was arrested in Beverly Hills for shoplifting from a luxury department store. Although the case involved no violence, the media sensationalized it into a national spectacle. Tabloids published headlines questioning her mental health, her stability, and her future. Hollywood, always sensitive to public image, recoiled from the controversy. The misdemeanor charge escalated into a narrative that she was unreliable, unstable, or hiding deeper issues. The trial, combined with the relentless press coverage, transformed a single incident into a career-defining crisis. Studio reactions were swift and quietly punitive. Projects that had considered her dropped her name from casting lists, and executives grew reluctant to attach her to big-budget productions. Insurance companies, a powerful but often unseen force in Hollywood, labeled her a risk, making her an expensive hire. Even though the industry never issued a formal ban, the combination of legal consequences, media hysteria, and behind-the-scenes caution effectively shut her out. For several years, she was absent from leading roles, a disappearance that felt eerily similar to a soft blacklist enforced through silence rather than public declarations. The aftermath was difficult. Ryder withdrew from the spotlight, taking smaller roles or stepping away entirely while trying to rebuild her personal life. Independent filmmakers continued to admire her talent, but the major studios kept their distance. She explored voice work, occasional supporting roles, and smaller projects that allowed her to work without the pressure of blockbuster expectations. Yet despite her efforts, the momentum she once commanded had evaporated. Hollywood's willingness to abandon her after one highly publicized mistake revealed the fragility of fame in a system driven by image management. Today, Winona Ryder's legacy has transformed dramatically. Her resurgence through the global hit Stranger Things reminded audiences of her remarkable gifts, earning her renewed respect and reclaiming her cultural presence. Many now see her as a survivor of Hollywood's unforgiving machine, a star who endured a modern version of an industry freeze-out, and ultimately reclaimed her place through resilience rather than public apology. Her journey continues to spark discussions about how quickly Hollywood discards its stars and how powerful a comeback can be when talent refuses to be forgotten. 10. Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey was once regarded as one of the finest actors of his generation, known for his precision charisma and ability to disappear into complex roles. From acclaimed films like American Beauty and The Usual Suspects, to his celebrated stage work and global fame through House of Cards, Spacey held a rare level of prestige. Studios trusted him, awards bodies honored him, and audiences viewed him as a master craftsman. At his peak, he not only starred in major productions, but also served as the artistic director of London's Old Vic, securing his place among Hollywood's elite. The turning point arrived when multiple allegations of sexual misconduct emerged, beginning with public accusations in 2017. The revelations ignited a cultural firestorm during the height of the Me Too movement. Headlines spread worldwide, and more individuals stepped forward with claims spanning years. Whether investigated, denied, or unresolved, the allegations created an environment in which studios, networks, and institutions could not risk association. The controversy grew so severe that it overshadowed every aspect of his career, transforming a celebrated legacy into a global scandal almost overnight. Hollywood's reaction was swift, decisive, and almost unprecedented. Netflix severed ties with him, immediately halting production on House of Cards, and removing him from the final season. Ridley Scott went as far as reshooting Spacey's completed scenes in the film All the Money in the World, replacing him with Christopher Plummer, only weeks before the release, a rare and costly move that demonstrated the industry's determination to distance itself publicly. Agencies dropped him, studios voided contracts, and major platforms refused to consider new projects. Without any formal hearing or studio announcement, Spacey was effectively banned from mainstream Hollywood. The aftermath left his career in ruins. Major roles vanished, stage opportunities evaporated, and international projects hesitated to involve him. Even as some legal cases were dismissed or resolved in his favor, the stigma remained. Attempts at returning to the screen through independent or foreign productions gained little traction. Spacey continued to release cryptic monologues online, but mainstream acceptance never re-emerged. The combination of allegations, corporate decisions, and public perception created a barrier far more limiting than any written blacklist. Today, Kevin Spacey's legacy remains deeply contested. Some argue that his artistic contributions are overshadowed permanently, while others believe the lack of legal convictions complicates the narrative. Historians now view his downfall as one of the quickest and most dramatic collapses of a modern Hollywood career, a defining example of how cultural movements and studio politics can reshape a star's fate. Regardless of viewpoint, one truth is clear: Hollywood has closed its doors, and Spacey, once considered an untouchable talent, stands as a reminder of how rapidly power can evaporate in an industry built on image and accountability. 9. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe stood at the pinnacle of 20th century stardom, embodying an image of glamour, vulnerability, and irresistible charisma that made her the most photographed woman of her era. Under contract with 20th Century Fox, she became the studio's most bankable star, drawing global audiences with her comedic timing, screen presence, and iconic persona. Films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and The 7-Year Itch turned her into a cultural symbol, and her face became synonymous with Hollywood itself. But behind that golden image was an ambitious actress determined to be taken seriously, a desire that would ultimately put her at odds with the studio that built her. The turning point came when Monroe grew frustrated with the shallow, repetitive roles Fox continued to give her. She felt typecast as the dumb blonde, a caricature that prevented her from exploring deeper, more dramatic work. She began refusing scripts she believed demeaned her talent, demanding better pay, script approval, and more meaningful roles. Her rebellion reached its peak when she rejected films that Fox insisted she complete under her contract. To studio executives accustomed to obedient stars, Monroe's defiance was unacceptable. Her decision to move to New York to study method acting signaled open war. Fox reacted with force. In 1954, the studio suspended her, halted her projects, and publicly criticized her as unprofessional. They believed punishing her would reinforce the power structure of the star system and send a warning to others who might challenge their authority. Monroe was essentially banned from Fox Productions until she complied with studio demands. For months, she was blocked from major roles, excluded from meetings, and portrayed in the press as difficult, a deliberate narrative crafted by Fox's publicity machine. Her ambitions for artistic control directly threatened the studio's business model, and they fought to keep her in her place. The aftermath, however, did not unfold as Fox expected. Instead of returning quietly, Monroe used her newfound independence to increase her fame. Her marriage to Joe DiMaggio and her public appearances in New York reignited public fascination. She founded her own production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions, an unprecedented move for a female star at the time. Under pressure and realizing her value, Fox eventually renegotiated her contract in 1955, granting her higher pay and greater creative input. Yet the earlier suspension remained a stain on her relationship with the studio, a reminder of how fragile her position had been. Today, Marilyn Monroe's legacy has evolved far beyond the roles she was once confined to. Historians view her as a pioneer who fought for artistic respect in an era when studios tightly controlled their stars. Her suspension is now seen as less a punishment for misconduct and more a retaliation against a woman demanding autonomy. Modern Hollywood remembers her as both a cultural icon and a figure whose struggles exposed the gendered power dynamics of the studio system. Her story stands as a testament to how even the most luminous star could be threatened with banishment for daring to challenge the machinery behind the magic. 8. Brendan Fraser. Brendan Fraser was once one of Hollywood's most beloved leading men, celebrated for his warmth, physicality, and effortless blend of action and comedy. Throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, he became a global star through films like The Mummy George of the Jungle and Bedazzled. Audiences connected with his sincerity, studios valued his reliability, and directors admired his ability to carry franchises with both heart and humor. At his peak, Fraser was positioned as a long-term cornerstone of mainstream entertainment, a rare actor equally capable of blockbuster appeal and emotional depth. The turning point arrived quietly, but catastrophically. Fraser later revealed that in 2003, he experienced an alleged sexual assault by a powerful figure within the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. He described the incident as deeply traumatizing and career-altering. Around the same time, he suffered multiple physical injuries from years of demanding stunt work, leading to repeated surgeries and long recovery periods. The combination of personal trauma, physical strain, and emotional exhaustion created a breaking point. As he spoke less publicly and withdrew from the spotlight, rumors circulated that he had become unreliable or had lost his leading man appeal. Hollywood's reaction was subtle but devastating. Fraser wasn't formally banned, but his opportunities evaporated in a pattern strikingly similar to a quiet blacklist. Studios stopped offering major roles, franchises moved on without him, and support from industry institutions dwindled. Behind closed doors, Fraser believed he was unofficially shunned for speaking out about his alleged assault, a claim that echoed other cases where stars faced retaliation for challenging powerful insiders. In an industry driven by perception and relationships, Fraser's retreat, combined with industry silence, effectively pushed him out of the system he once helped fuel. The aftermath was painful. Fraser stepped away to recover physically and mentally, while the public narrative painted him as a fading star rather than a sidelined one. He acted in smaller, often overlooked projects, moved away from Los Angeles, and focused on raising his children. The actor who once commanded global box office success found himself nearly invisible on the Hollywood radar. Yet throughout those years, fans continued to express affection for him, creating a foundation that would eventually support an unexpected resurgence. Today, Brendan Fraser's legacy is one of remarkable resilience. His comeback in The Whale, which earned him some of the highest critical praise of his career, sparked what became known as the Renaissance. Modern Hollywood remembers him not as a star who fell from grace, but as one who was quietly pushed aside and courageously fought his way back. His story now represents a powerful commentary on the industry's unspoken mechanisms, how a star can be sidelined without a single official ban, and how genuine talent can still rise again when audiences demand justice. Fraser's journey stands as one of the most inspiring turnarounds in contemporary film history. 7. Kirk Cameron. Kirk Cameron rose to fame as one of the most recognizable teen idols of the 80s, becoming the breakout star of the hit sitcom Growing Pains. With his boy-next-door charm, confident delivery, and natural comedic timing, he quickly became a household name. Studios viewed him as a bankable talent, networks saw him as a reliable lead, and audiences embraced him as the emblem of youthful optimism on American television. At his peak, Cameron was positioned to transition from teen star to major Hollywood figure, with opportunities in film endorsements and high-profile television roles lined up for the next phase of his career. The turning point came when Cameron experienced a profound religious conversion during his time on Growing Pains. His beliefs, sincere and deeply personal, soon began influencing his on-set behavior and professional choices. He reportedly objected to certain storylines, pushed for script changes, and challenged material he believed conflicted with his values. Cast members and writers later recalled tensions as Cameron became increasingly vocal about content he considered inappropriate. What began as spiritual transformation gradually escalated into creative conflict, with Cameron viewed by producers as difficult to manage and unwilling to align with the show's comedic direction. Hollywood's reaction was swift and unspoken. Studios quietly distanced themselves, labeling him a risk for mainstream productions. Despite no formal ban, his name became associated with uncompromising demands and rigid creative boundaries, traits the industry rarely tolerates in actors, especially those transitioning from youth stardom. Offers for major roles dwindled. Agents hesitated to pitch him. Networks avoided casting him in projects where flexibility and broad appeal were essential. Though not publicly exiled, Cameron was effectively shut out of much of Hollywood's mainstream engine. The aftermath reshaped his career entirely. With major studios turning away, Cameron shifted toward independent faith-based films, embracing a niche audience that welcomed his convictions. Movies like Fireproof and Left Behind found success within that space, but they further signaled his departure from traditional Hollywood. Over time, he became more associated with activism and religious programming than with the acting career that once made him a national phenomenon. The former teen idol found fulfillment in his new direction, but the mainstream doors he once held open remained firmly closed. Today, Kirk Cameron's legacy sits at a crossroads of admiration and controversy. Supporters praise him for prioritizing his values over fame, while critics view him as an example of how ideological conflicts can derail a promising Hollywood trajectory. Regardless of perspective, his story demonstrates the industry's intolerance for stars who challenge its creative norms or shift away from the broad appeal executives depend on. Cameron remains a significant figure in faith-based entertainment, but his departure from mainstream Hollywood stands as a reminder of how quietly, yet completely, the industry can remove a star when their beliefs collide with its system. 6. Isaiah Washington. Isaiah Washington was once positioned as one of television's strongest dramatic performers, gaining widespread recognition for his nuanced work across both film and TV. His role as Dr. Preston Burke on the massively successful medical drama Grey's Anatomy marked the peak of his career. Audiences embraced his commanding presence, critics praised his intensity, and studios saw him as a dependable asset, capable of elevating any ensemble cast. With a major network role and growing influence, Washington seemed set for a long, stable run in mainstream Hollywood. The turning point came during an on-set conflict that became one of the most publicized controversies in modern television history. Reports emerged that Washington had used a homophobic slur in reference to a cast member during a heated argument. Although he initially denied aspects of the incident, the situation escalated when he repeated the slur backstage at the Golden Globe Awards while attempting to address the controversy. The remark reignited the backlash, transforming a private dispute into a nationwide discussion about discrimination, professionalism, and respect within the workplace. The media storm made it impossible for the studio to ignore. Hollywood's reaction was swift and decisive. ABC and the show's producers faced mounting pressure from advocacy groups, viewers, and corporate partners. In response, the network chose not to renew Washington's contract, effectively removing him from Grey's Anatomy and distancing itself from the controversy. The decision served as both a disciplinary action and a public relations strategy, signaling the network's zero-tolerance stance on discriminatory behavior. Though no studio issued a formal blacklist, Washington found himself quietly shut out of major network roles and high-profile opportunities in the years immediately following the incident. The aftermath saw his career take a sharp turn. Washington struggled to secure work in mainstream television, with most of his projects shifting towards smaller films, limited guest appearances, or independent productions. The narrative surrounding him, shaped by media coverage and amplified by online discourse, overshadowed his talent and previous contributions. Despite public apologies and attempts to address the controversy, he found that the industry had little interest in offering a second chance. The doors that once opened easily were now locked by a combination of public perception and executive caution. Today, Isaiah Washington's legacy is complex. Some acknowledge the severity of his actions, while others question whether the long-term consequences were proportionate to the incident. He eventually found renewed visibility in series such as The 100, but his mainstream career never fully recovered. Washington's experience is often cited as a case study in how swiftly and completely Hollywood can isolate a performer when their behavior becomes a liability. His story remains a sharp reminder of the industry's sensitivity to public image and of how one moment can permanently alter even the most promising trajectory. 5. Vanessa Marquez. Vanessa Marquez began her career with a burst of early promise, earning praise for her sensitive, nuanced performances in films like Stand and Deliver. Her work displayed a natural, emotional honesty that distinguished her from other rising actors of her era. When she joined the cast of the hit medical drama ER, she appeared poised for long-term success. Audiences admired the quiet depth she brought to her character, and industry observers saw her as a performer capable of a wide range of dramatic roles. At her peak, Marquez was considered one of the quiet but serious talents who could have built a steady and respected Hollywood career. The turning point came when Marquez publicly alleged mistreatment behind the scenes of ER. She claimed she had faced discrimination, harassment, and professional retaliation. Marquez also stated that her efforts to report her concerns led to further marginalization rather than support. Around the same period, she struggled with health issues, including depression and physical conditions that made work increasingly challenging. These factors combined to create emotional strain that shaped both her public statements and professional life. As her allegations gained attention, studios and networks grew cautious, interpreting the situation as a high-risk liability. Hollywood's reaction was indirect but deeply damaging. Without issuing any public ban, the industry effectively stopped calling. Casting opportunities, even for small roles, diminished sharply. Executives feared the potential for negative publicity or legal complications, and the unspoken nature of this distancing made it nearly impossible for Marquez to challenge or even fully understand the extent of her isolation. The quiet freeze-out that followed functioned like a soft blacklist. No official statements, no formal decisions, only silence and closed doors. To an actor without the protection of major star power, the effect was devastating. The aftermath pushed Marquez further from the mainstream industry. She continued to express concerns about her treatment and her belief that she had been unfairly blacklisted, but her claims received limited attention. Health struggles, financial instability, and the emotional burden of unemployment compounded over the years. She pursued smaller creative projects and online discussions about industry problems, yet Hollywood remained inaccessible. Her tragic death in 2018 brought renewed attention to her life, but it also highlighted how thoroughly the system had abandoned her long before. Today, Vanessa Marquez's legacy is remembered with a mixture of admiration and sorrow. Supporters view her as a victim of an industry that quietly exiles those who speak out without the fame needed to protect them. Her story is often cited in discussions about workplace harassment, mental health support, and the hidden mechanisms of Hollywood retaliation. Though her career never reached the heights her early talent promised, her experience stands as a powerful reminder of how vulnerable actors can be within a system that solves problems not through accountability, but through silence. Marquez's name continues to appear in conversations about reform representation and the human cost of studio power. 4. Rose McGowan. Rose McGowan emerged as one of the defining figures of the late 90s and early 2000s, known for her striking screen presence, edgy charisma, and willingness to take roles that pushed against Hollywood's norms. From her breakout in The Doom Generation to mainstream success in Scream and Charmed, she cultivated an image that blended independence with raw artistic energy. Directors admired her boldness, fans connected with her authenticity, and studios saw her as a bankable performer capable of elevating both television and film. At her peak, McGowan appeared primed for a long, dynamic career across multiple genres. The turning point arrived when McGowan accused powerful producer Harvey Weinstein of sexually assaulting her in the 90s. For years, she stated that her career suffered retaliation as a result of rejecting his advances and refusing to remain silent. Even before the Me Too movement brought widespread attention to industry abuse, McGowan had spoken publicly about systemic mistreatment, but often received skepticism, backlash, or outright dismissal. She described a pattern of obstacles, lost roles, sabotaged opportunities, and unexplained professional setbacks that she believed were connected to Weinstein's influence and Hollywood's willingness to protect its own. Hollywood's reaction unfolded quietly but with immense force. Without any formal announcement, major studios and executives distanced themselves, labeling her as difficult, unpredictable, or unreliable. Those terms, often weaponized against women who challenge power, served as coded language for an informal blacklist. Casting agents hesitated to pitch her productions, avoided her name, and roles that should have been within reach simply disappeared. As McGowan grew more outspoken, particularly on social media, the industry's silence hardened into exclusion. While she continued to work, the large-scale opportunities she once seemed destined for were effectively closed off. The aftermath reshaped her career entirely. Rather than retreat, McGowan leaned deeper into activism, becoming one of the most visible and vocal figures of the Me Too movement. She published a memoir, participated in documentaries, and used every available platform to expose what she described as decades of abuse, corruption, and institutional cover-ups. But her activism also came at a personal cost: increased media scrutiny, intense public debate, and further distance from Hollywood's mainstream machinery. She relocated outside the United States and shifted her focus toward art, music, and advocacy rather than traditional acting roles. Today, Rose McGowan's legacy is divided yet undeniable. Supporters hail her as one of the most courageous whistleblowers of her generation, a woman who sacrificed her career to reveal truths that reshaped the global conversation about abuse in entertainment. Critics argue that her confrontational stance made collaboration difficult, yet historians increasingly frame her story as a case study in how Hollywood protects power and punishes dissent. Whether admired or criticized, her impact on the film industry is profound. McGowan stands as a symbol of bravery, and her experiences illuminate the hidden systems that can exile a star long before the public ever sees the consequences. 3. Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson was once one of the most powerful and admired figures in global cinema. From his early rise in Mad Max and Lethal Weapon to his Oscar-winning success with Braveheart, He occupied a rare position as both a bankable movie star and a respected director. Studios trusted him with massive budgets, audiences adored his charisma, and critics praised his ambition. By the early 2000s, Gibson had become an industry titan capable of shaping box office trends and influencing the direction of major studio filmmaking. Few performers enjoyed his level of international recognition, financial success, and creative authority. The turning point arrived through a series of controversies that collided directly with his public image. His 2006 arrest for driving under the influence, during which he made anti-Semitic remarks, generated immediate global backlash. Years later, leaked audio recordings of explosive arguments, including threatening language toward his former partner, reignited anger and intensified scrutiny. These incidents, amplified by relentless media coverage, transformed Gibson from a beloved icon into one of Hollywood's most polarizing figures. The combination of offensive comments, personal scandal, and public outbursts shattered his reputation in an industry hypersensitive to public perception. Hollywood's reaction was sharp and unforgiving. Studios halted projects, suspended deals, and publicly distanced themselves from him. His agency, William Morris Endeavor, dropped him entirely. Major producers deemed him uncastable, and directors avoided attaching their names to his work. Even roles he had already filmed, such as his cameo in The Hangover Part 2, were removed after public pressure. While no official blacklist existed, the industry's coordinated withdrawal functionally banned him from mainstream Hollywood. He went from headlining blockbusters to being shut out of major roles, financing opportunities, and studio-level directing jobs. The aftermath forced Gibson into creative isolation. With the mainstream system closed, he turned to independent productions and smaller international projects. Though he continued working behind the scenes, the scale and visibility of his projects diminished dramatically. Only years later did he begin to rebuild his career, culminating in the critically acclaimed Hacksaw Ridge, which earned him renewed respect as a filmmaker. But even this comeback did not fully restore his former status. Many studios remain cautious, and public reactions to his reemergence are divided. Today, Mel Gibson's legacy is deeply conflicted. Supporters argue that his talent as both actor and director remains undeniable, pointing to his significant contributions to modern cinema. Critics maintain that his past behavior forever altered how he is perceived, representing a line Hollywood will not easily forgive. Scholars studying his career often cite him as one of the clearest examples of how explosive public scandals can dismantle even the most powerful Hollywood careers. His story illustrates both the fragility of fame and the complexity of redemption in an industry where reputation is as valuable as talent and just as easily destroyed. 2. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan rose from child star to global phenomenon with a speed few in Hollywood history have matched. Her early roles in The Parent Trap, Freaky Friday, and Mean Girls showcased a rare combination of comedic brilliance, emotional nuance, and natural charisma. Studios saw her as a once-in-a-generation talent capable of carrying both teen classics and mainstream comedies. Critics praised her timing, audiences adored her charm, and executives envisioned her as the next long-running superstar. At her peak, she was one of the most photographed celebrities in the world, a box office guarantee, and a cultural force shaping fashion, music, and youth identity. The turning point arrived when Lohan's personal life began overshadowing her work. A series of highly publicized legal issues, rehab stays, and missed call times created a pattern that Hollywood could no longer ignore. Reports of erratic behavior on set, along with clashes with directors and producers, fueled industry whisper networks. Insurance companies, the behind-the-scenes power brokers that determine a star's financial risk, increasingly viewed her as unstable, driving up costs for any production that considered hiring her. What began as tabloid chaos rapidly escalated into a professional crisis. Hollywood's reaction grew harsher with each incident. Studios quietly stopped pursuing her for major roles, and production companies became reluctant to hire her at all. She wasn't formally banned, but she became what insiders call unbondable, too risky to insure, and therefore too costly to cast. Major projects dropped her even after she'd signed on. Directors publicly described struggles working with her, reinforcing a narrative that made studios even more cautious. In effect, the industry shut its doors not through an official blacklist, but through the financial mechanisms that determine who gets to work and who doesn't. The aftermath forced Lohan into a turbulent balance between attempted comebacks and ongoing personal challenges. She moved between independent films, reality shows, and European projects, but none restored her former star power. While she occasionally appeared in promising roles, the mainstream system remained hesitant. Attempts to reset her image were undermined by the lingering perception that she was unreliable, and Hollywood's patience, once generous due to her extraordinary early talent, had evaporated. Years of absence from major studio productions further eroded her standing. Today, Lindsay Lohan's legacy is undergoing a slow reassessment. Recent projects have allowed her to demonstrate a more grounded presence, and many fans see her as a survivor of child star pressures rather than a cautionary tale. Historians note that the industry placed extraordinary demands on her at a young age, amplifying every misstep under a global spotlight. While Hollywood has yet to fully restore her former stature, modern audiences are increasingly sympathetic to her journey. Lohan remains a symbol of both the brutal consequences of early fame and the possibility of reinvention, a reminder of how quickly Hollywood can push someone out and how long it takes for them to find their way back. 1. Shannen Doherty. Shannen Doherty was one of the most recognizable television stars of the 90s, rising to fame with her breakout role in Beverly Hills 90210, where her intensity and emotional range captivated viewers. Her popularity soared even higher when she joined the supernatural hit Charmed, helping anchor the show's early success with her commanding screen presence. At her peak, Doherty was a defining face of American pop culture, a performer with strong audience appeal, sharp instincts, and the ability to carry long-running series. Studios viewed her as a valuable asset, and fans embraced her as one of the era's most compelling TV icons. The turning point came when Doherty's reputation for on-set conflicts began overshadowing her talent. Throughout her time on Beverly Hills 90210, reports circulated of clashes with cast members, creative disagreements, and inconsistent attendance. Similar rumors resurfaced during Charmed, where tensions allegedly grew between Doherty and other key performers. Whether exaggerated by tabloids or fueled by genuine friction, the narratives surrounding her behavior gained momentum. Media coverage amplified the idea that she was difficult to work with, and the perception soon became more powerful than any actual incident. Hollywood's reaction was firm. Networks and studios became increasingly reluctant to hire her for major productions. Although she was never formally banned, the pattern of distancing operated like an unofficial blacklist. Producers feared potential disruptions, publicists worried about negative press, and executives concluded that casting her posed too many risks. Her high-profile departure from Charmed, framed without detailed explanation, reinforced the industry's belief that she was unpredictable. While independent projects and guest roles remained possible, mainstream opportunities evaporated, closing the doors that once stood wide open. The aftermath pushed Doherty into a different path within the entertainment world. She continued acting, taking roles in television, movies, reality shows, and smaller productions that embraced her fan base but lacked the scale of her earlier work. As she grew older, Doherty confronted personal challenges, including battles with cancer, which reshaped public perception and generated widespread support. Her resilience and openness about her struggles softened much of the earlier criticism, allowing audiences to see the human being behind the headlines. Yet despite this shift, Hollywood's systemic caution never fully lifted. Today, Shannen Doherty's legacy is viewed through a more compassionate and nuanced lens. Fans recognize her as a talented and influential actress who shaped an entire era of pop culture, while industry observers acknowledge that the narrative surrounding her career was driven as much by media sensationalism as by reality. Her story illustrates how reputation, fair or not, can determine a star's fate in Hollywood, and how quickly an industry can sideline even its brightest talents. Doherty stands as a reminder of both the high stakes of fame and the strength required to endure beyond the limits the system tries to impose. Hollywood has always been a place of dazzling lights, soaring careers, and extraordinary talent, but it is also a system that can close its doors without warning. The stories you've just heard reveal how quickly a star can fall from favor, not always because of guilt or innocence, but because of power perception and the industry's instinct to protect itself above all else. Some of these names fought their way back, others never fully returned, and a few became cautionary tales etched into Hollywood history. If you want to keep uncovering the hidden battles, forgotten scandals, and untold decisions that shaped the entertainment world, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Tick Tick, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for watching, and remember, in Hollywood, every bright light casts a shadow.